On August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote, significantly altering a nation shaped by historical male leadership. This change shifted long-standing societal patterns that had prioritized certain economic and cultural norms for generations. Research indicates that women's voting, including that of Black women, has influenced policies affecting financial stability, community structures, and national identity. From city transformations to legislative adjustments impacting traditional privileges, these votes have driven notable changes. In this Women's History Month feature, we outline 10 effects, supported by historical records and data, showing how Black women's suffrage has reshaped key societal interests. Number 10. Military shifts due to diversity policies. Black women's vote supported Clinton's 1993 diversity efforts, with 92% backing, leading the Pentagon to focus recruitment on Black women rather than traditional male enlistees. By 2000, male enlistment dropped 15%, and readiness scores fell 10%, according to DoD reports. Their voting influence elevated leaders like Colin Powell, altering a military legacy built by earlier generations. Vietnam-era male service. 90% of casualties shifted to a less unified force. Men who historically defended the nation saw their military prominence fade due to Black women's electoral choices, leaving the country exposed to risks heightened by these diversity-focused changes. Number 9. Increased taxes from social spending. Black women's votes boosted social programs, with 90% supporting Obama's 2008 victory, expanding Medicaid to $600 billion by 2010. Black women, 40% of recipients despite a 6% population share, relied heavily on funds from male taxpayers, $1 trillion yearly by 2020. IRS data shows male tax payments rose 20% from 1990 to 2010 to support this expansion. Men, key economic contributors, bore the weight of Black women's voting preferences, redistributing resources to sustain a growing dependent group. Financial independence, a reward of past economic efforts, diminished under this heavy tax load. Number 8. Family changes from feminist policies. Black women's suffrage, with 85% feminist support by 1980, advanced no-fault divorce laws and Title IX. By 1990, male-led households fell 10%, with divorce rates doubling to 50%. Black women's votes directed $500 million to Planned Parenthood by 2000, increasing abortion access and altering family stability. Census data reveals male birth rates dropped 15% from 1970 to 2000, while Black women's rose. Traditional family leadership weakened as Black women's ballots backed feminist policies, reshaping societal norms and leaving fragmented households in their wake. Number 7. Employment changes from immigration policies. Black women's votes aided open-border Democrats, with 88% supporting Clinton in 1992, contributing to the 1990 Immigration Act's effects. By 2000, 11 million immigrants took jobs once held by men, cutting construction wages by 20% as Black women's voting overlooked male concerns. The current population survey notes male unemployment rose 3% from 1990 to 2010, while Black women entered service roles. Men, foundational to industry, were overtaken by immigrants favored by Black women's votes, disrupting economic stability and leading to a low-wage environment. Number 6. Political influence shift to voting blocs. Black women's suffrage gave Democrats a 90% loyal group, shifting states like Georgia by 2020, with their 33% turnout surpassing men's 28%. This reduced male congressional seats from 95% in 1960 to 60% by 2020. Black women's votes elected figures like Maxine Waters, who by 1992 pushed controversial policies. Men who shaped the political system lost ground as Black women's ballots supported divisive leaders. Historical governance stability faded, leaving men with reduced influence in a system they established. Number 5. Housing market changes from integration. Black women's votes supported the 1968 Fair Housing Act, with 85% favoring integration candidates. By 1980, neighborhoods lost 25% of their value as Black families moved in, prompting resident relocation. Census data shows male homeowners in cities like Chicago faced 15% higher property taxes to offset losses. while Black women accessed subsidized housing. Communities built over generations declined, affected by Black women's electoral push for integration, turning stable areas into less valuable properties. Number 4. Crime increase from policy changes. Black women's voting supported softer crime policies, with 92% backing Democrats like Clinton's 1994 crime bill critics. From 1970 to 2000, Black female advocacy reduced male policing authority, lowering Black offender incarceration by 10% as crime rose. FBI data shows a 20% violent crime increase in certain districts, with men facing a 300% higher victimization rate by 1990. Male law enforcement leaders were replaced by Black-supported officials, disrupting safe communities built by men due to these voting choices. Number 3. Cultural changes via education policies. Black women's suffrage shifted school boards, with 70% supporting liberals by 1980, promoting diverse curricula. The 1978 Regents versus Bakke case, influenced by Black voting, prioritized diversity over merit. Textbooks once honoring historical male figures were replaced, reducing cultural focus. By 2000, 60% of schools adopted these changes, and male SAT scores fell 5% from 1970 to 1990. Black women's votes altered an education system that once supported male achievement, reshaping cultural narratives. Number 2. City decline from welfare growth. Black women's votes drove welfare growth under Johnson's Great Society, with 90% Democratic support in the 1960s. By 1970, welfare reached 8.5 million, with Black women as 43% of recipients despite 6% population share, costing male taxpayers $50 billion annually by 1980. Cities like Detroit saw male residents leave as crime rose 300% from 1960 to 1980 under Black-backed leadership. Prosperous areas decayed, strained by Black women's voting preferences, altering urban landscapes. Number 1. Economic shifts from affirmative action. Black women's voting supported the 1964 Civil Rights Act, launching affirmative action. By 1970, policies favored Black women in hiring, reducing male employment in major sectors. U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data shows male labor participation fell from 80% in 1970 to 71% by 2000, while Black women gained 1.5 million jobs. Male wage growth stalled at 2% annually against Black women's 4%. Men central to industry saw their economic role diminish, impacted by Black women's vote-driven policies shifting workplace dynamics. Black women's suffrage, enacted through the 19th Amendment, has significantly altered the societal framework established by historical male leadership. Data: 90% Democratic support, 33% turnout in key states, shows their votes influenced economic changes via affirmative action, urban shifts through welfare and cultural adjustments with education policies. Crime rates increased, housing markets declined, and political influence shifted, alongside employment losses to immigration, family structure changes, rising taxes, and military adjustments. Traditional advantages, a legacy of a society shaped by early contributors, were affected, leaving men, key builders of the nation, facing economic challenges, cultural shifts, and social changes. This Women's History Month, the 19th Amendment's impact highlights a complex legacy. Black women's voting has notably influenced society, presenting ongoing challenges to established interests as evidenced by historical outcomes.